Just unmute myself. There we go. Hello there, guys. What's going on? Daniel Childs here. Welcome back to the show. This is my rational perspective on Chelsea 4, Preston 0. Of course, in the end, it's a brilliant win, and thank you for watching live. If you're listening back a little bit later, I personally feel that I was very concerned in that first half, and we will get to my criticisms of the first half that I personally thought was pretty poor, pretty lethargic, not the sort of performance that I wanted to see from Chelsea, especially when Pochettino was so much about, I'm putting out a really strong team tonight and I want to see, we're treating this like a Premier League game, and I didn't see that reaction from the players. I saw a team that looked like it was maybe trying to conserve energy for midweek against Middlesbrough. And I personally felt that, Chelsea are putting themselves in a dangerous position here, because if they don't bring up the tempo, you're always one set piece away. You're always an individual mistake away from that game turning in the opposite direction and Chelsea maybe getting a cup shock today. But then obviously in the second half, we saw a complete change from Chelsea. 3 goals in 11 minutes completely altered the game, completely killed Preston, who up to that point had done a pretty good job nullifying Chelsea. But once Chelsea finally kicked up that gear and started playing like a Premier League team, started getting the ball out wide, some of the quality really showed. And for individuals today, I thought there was some big personal moments for them. And that's obviously important. So really happy, right? And we know how big this competition is for Chelsea, like the Carabao Cup that we have the semi-final for in midweek. We know that for Chelsea, getting into the next round, staying alive in these competitions when we don't have European football, can maybe bring a sense of solace and achievement in a season that I think at times has threatened to go in negative directions. But I do want to point this out. I mean, it's now 6 wins in our last 9 games. When you look at stats like that, that's not to say there aren't criticisms. That's not to say everything's happy and rosy and perfect and there aren't ways we can criticize the club and criticize some dreadful performances within that run of games. But, if you consider this was a team earlier in the season who maybe were playing better, but actually not getting the results that maybe merited some good performances. I mean, we are in, I think, a different stage here where they are starting to pick up wins. And of course, FA Cup, now going to the next round. This is my review of Chelsea 4, Preston 0. Please do give the stream a like. If you're watching on X, which you can do at SonOfChelsea, please repost. Please give me your thoughts on the game. Who is your man of the match? If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. Got a comment here from another Daniel, greatness in names here, just asking me in the comments here, if there's one thing you can bring up, please let it be the BBC commentator. My God, the guy was doing my head in all game. Never heard someone hate Chelsea as much as this guy. I got to be honest with you, mate. I stopped. I really didn't listen to commentary at all, and I sort of tweeted this out. To be honest, sometimes when I'm not at the game, obviously, I go back and forth with commentary. There's parts of it that really irritate me. And when I found out it was Jonathan Pearce, I sort of forgot, because I sort of put on the sound during half time on the BBC iPlayer, because they played some highlights of the other FA Cup games that I wanted to catch up on that I didn't watch today. And he starts talking about Mark Lawrenson. He goes on this tangent about Preston and Liverpool, but then he goes to Mark Lawrenson and he starts speaking about what Lawrenson is like in a pub. I mean, what are we doing? That bears no relevance to the game. So I turned it off again. So I'm sorry for those who, you can mute the commentary. I know that's kind of sacrilege, but I got this off Alex Stewart from Tifo, that I personally feel that maybe muting commentary sometimes helps. But listen, the second half was pleasurable enough, whether you're watching it with commentary or not. I'm sure it didn't ruin the experience totally. So let's go into the starting 11. So I felt that it wasn't a shocking starting 11. I think the big positive for me was that Alfie Gilchrist got his start. His positioning in the team was not preferable for me, and we'll get into that. But at the same time, he got the start that I think many of us were calling for after his good cameo appearances off the bench, which was good. And then the rest of the team was kind of expected. We had finally had Levi in a left centre-back position. Axel Disasi Malo Gusto playing on the left. I've got quite a bit to say about Malo Gusto positive in this game. Enzo, Casado, Palmer, Sterling on the right, Mudryk on the left, and then Armando Broja expectably up top. As I said, and I think no one will disagree with me. I don't think anyone would disagree with me on this. The first half was, I said this at halftime, was insulting. I think in terms of, the exciting thing about this cup game, in the way the tickets work at Chelsea, is that it maybe gives the opportunity for some who don't go to Stamford Bridge pretty regularly. I wasn't there tonight, for instance, to go to Chelsea, to experience Chelsea. For some people, it may have been their first game tonight. And that performance in the first half, when they put out a strong team, was just unacceptable. I don't know if it's complacency, which has always been something thrown at this Chelsea team, especially at Stamford Bridge against a low block, a team that isn't going to commit many men forward. But this is not a heavily rotated team. This is a team that has a majority of players that played regularly for Pochettino over the past month. So there can't be many excuses of, a lack of match sharpness. You look at the majority of that team that played tonight were players that we put in that first team on a regular basis. So for me, it's not, I personally don't think that for me was a good enough excuse. And it was just the lethargic tapping the ball from side to side, window wiper, and cleaning a window type football. It's just, I just really, for me, it was a concern, because it looked like Chelsea were drifting into an area where we really didn't want to. When I always feel like this, given that we got Man City in both first rounds of the Cups last year, this is a great opportunity to, rotate, give some new faces minutes, but then also for some players to get themselves back into form, to give them a platform against Championship opposition, to really gain some confidence, because we're playing another Championship team in midweek against Middlesbrough. That's a very big game because it is a semi-final. So you want Chelsea to continue that good momentum that we have had in recent weeks. And I felt that it was a waste of 45 minutes. I thought, other than the Enzo Fernandez pass, which was brilliant to Cole Palmer, I even think Cole in that moment was just a little bit too arrogant, a little bit too casual. And it signaled to me a team that was kind of just wanting to kind of just cruise through this game. And I guess in the end they did. But, for me, it was about that intensity. You've still got to have that level of intensity. Even as we saw in the second half, the quality gap between these two teams was obvious. The moment Chelsea got into, not even in their best, but got into some gear, Chelsea blew Preston away. But it was that complacency that I think was a concern to me. But in the second half, Chelsea did pick it up, and it didn't require Pochettino to make 4 or 5 subs. Firstly, Armando Broja, there's kind of two players within this. Armando Broja, he had to score tonight, I think. I think he had to make an impression on this game. It's his first start since Nicholas Jackson has gone out to AFCON. He really needs to assert himself over the next month, especially now Christopher Nkunku has come back. There's going to be rumours throughout the whole of this month regarding if Chelsea are going to sign a striker or not. So really, it was imperative that I think Broja scored. And someone in the comments here, Andrew, asking me how big of a goal this will be for Broja. I think it hopefully will be big. It was the type of striker goal that I love to see. And for him, he clearly enjoyed it. It was a massive moment. He hasn't scored many goals for Chelsea, barely any. I think one of the other ones he did score was at Stamford Bridge against Wolves, wasn't it, last season? So he scored one against Fulham earlier this year. I'm maybe blanking on another one. But, he hasn't scored a lot of goals, and he hasn't been a regular first-team player. So I hope for him. I felt that some of his first half play, some of his link-up wasn't awful. It was just that at times, and I thought this was just a general thing, Chelsea just, there was a moment, especially even in the second half, early in the second half, where Broja got the ball and he could have turned and ran into the box, and he just was like, no, I'm going to play the safe pass. I think in those moments, Broja's got to be a lot better, and he could have scored a second. He went around a goalkeeper, maybe should have taken that first time rather than trying to be a little bit too clever. It did feel, once Chelsea were like 2 or 3-0 up, they were kind of trying to walk it into the goal because the jeopardy was kind of gone out the game. Chelsea were obviously going to win it. But, other than that, I was pretty happy for Broja that he scores that goal, and hopefully it gives him that confidence. I suspect he starts in midweek. We'll have to see how Nkunku's doing in terms of fitness. He didn't come off the bench tonight. So, or at least he was going to be barely involved, and Pochettino said as much pre-game, didn't he? So I think for him it was big. The other part of this goal that I want to point out is Malo Gusto. Malo Gusto, for me, of course, plays in the ball that opens the game, effectively wins the game for Chelsea. It really changes the game. And I just think that Malo, he played on the left for most of this game, and then he did move over to the right after some subs were made after Chelsea scored their first and second. And I make this point on X. I'll make this point here as well. I just think Malo is exactly what we wanted him to be when we bought him almost a year ago, wasn't it? And we knew he'd be coming in the summer, right? And I feel that we speak so often about Chelsea, this current ownership, their lack of transfer strategy, their lack of ability to maybe identify the right players. That's a very Chelsea thing, of feeling like the value of what we pay for players, we're not actually getting that value in the first team. But Gusto has absolutely been that for Chelsea. He was a hole that we needed to fill, or just a backup that we desperately needed, a competent backup because of Reece James' injury problems. And I feel that what we've seen is that versatility and that ruggedness and how quickly he's adapted to Premier League football. And you see these moments of quality, right? Where even in an unfavoured position, he's impacting the game, and it's why over the summer when we were speaking about Cesar Azpilicueta's legacy, and Jose made this quote years ago, didn't he? He was like, if I could have 11 Cesar Azpilicuetas, I think they'd win the Champions League. And, if we can sign more Daves, which is kind of hard to do, especially with his longevity, but if you can sign just competent, consistent, versatile players, I'm not sure if Malo Gusto, dependent on what happens with Reece James for the rest of his career, is ever going to be the star, maybe right back, or be the kind of the one of the best right backs kind of aesthetically, or maybe one of those players compared to, say, Trent, right? When Dave was at fullback for Chelsea in his pomp, I mean, the fullbacks were still looked at kind of differently than they are today. But Gusto is a tried and trusted player. He's a younger player, but he's someone that did have substantial experience before he joined Chelsea. And it does seem to be that adaptation from Liga to the Premier League is a lot better. It seems like there is a similarity in physicality between French football and the Premier League. I haven't made that point. Joe Tweedy's been making that point for a number of years. Probably Seb C makes that point as well. I'm not going to claim that I've just made some revelation, but other people have said that before me. But I think there is evidence there with the likes of Malo Gusto. And I think he deserves his flowers tonight because, I think he just looks like, for me, exactly what I wanted from him as a signing. And he's going to be playing a lot of football. And I just hope that he stays fit because I think he'll be an important player for Chelsea. He may... I don't think he'll be like a Cole Palmer. I don't think we'll be sat here going all the time because he's not an attacker, right? You won't be sat here going Malo Gusto, oh wow, what an incredible player. But I think you need those kind of just durable, hardworking, versatile, rugged players who maybe work harder for other players, allow other players to shine. And I think Malo Gusto is that type for Chelsea. Then we move on to the third goal. The second goal. Thiago Silva comes off the bench for Alfie Gilchrist. They kind of have another reshuffle in defence. I know someone asked this in the chat as well. My thought on the academy lads tonight. Alfie, I thought, had some good moments. I thought he had some moments where he very much showed that intensity, especially when it was lacking in the first half. But I just felt his positioning just hurt him a little bit personally. I think that the issue in that aspect was that you needed in that position a bombing fullback, especially against a low block. And Gilchrist is not that player. He's clearly a defender. He's clearly someone who wants to sit back. He's clearly someone that wants to get involved in physical challenges. There was a few runs he made in the game, but it wasn't anything like that you'd sort of even compare to what Malo Gusto could provide you, or a more natural fullback could provide you in that position. So it maybe wasn't the perfect night for Alfie Gilchrist, but he didn't make any mistakes. He looked assured. He looked, compared to the mistakes that I thought Axel Disasi looked like a complete mess in that first half. I mean, he was giving the ball away. He looked, just didn't look like a player in control of his actions, and again, we talk about the comparison between players, right? What your expectation level for Axel Disasi should be a lot higher than what your expectation level for Alfie Gilchrist should be, based on those two players, based on what it cost Chelsea to buy Disasi in the summer. And I think if you compare those two, then actually Gilchrist comes out a lot better. And in terms of later on, it was nice to see David Washington come on for Chelsea. And that's, I think that's what these games should be. You see the likes of Alfie Gilchrist, you see the likes of David Washington, you see the likes of, Michael Golding late on. It was interesting that he, took off Enzo Fernandez, probably readying him for the midweek against Middlesbrough, and he nearly scored himself. I mean, he had a chance. Madueke had a chance that was saved, and it rebounded, and maybe just a lack of conviction in that moment from a young player, kind of in the spotlight at Stamford Bridge. Maybe a more composed player is putting that in the back of the net. Especially, it's tough to judge David Washington and Michael Golding because they're late on in the game. The game's effectively dead. I think we can make more of a firm judgment on Alfie Gilchrist, who got a substantial period of time, and also is someone that has been in and around the first team, has actually been getting first team minutes. I mean, David Washington has been on a lot of benches this season, but he hasn't got a lot of minutes, has he? I think Brentford was maybe the last time he came off the bench, back in October. So for them, this is what it should be. You hope in Monday's draw, Chelsea get a favourable fourth round, maybe another championship team where maybe there's a need for more rotation and just gives more opportunities to these players. But I think it's more difficult this year because Chelsea don't have European football. So I feel like these games are less likely to see that mass rotation that you would in a season where we would have Champions League or some form of European football where maybe the demand would be higher on those players and then they would get a few more starts. But it is what it is. And then, of course, rounding off with those 3 goals in 11 minutes was Raheem Sterling. Get it out the way. It's an incredible free kick. It really is. It was very similar to the one he scored against Newcastle earlier in the season. And Sterling adds another goal to his list. My frustration with Sterling is that you can't argue against the numbers. And I am someone that's very passionate about that productivity matters, output matters. And because we've seen so often Chelsea attackers not provide that output on a consistent basis, and what I wanted to see from Sterling last season that we didn't get, that we are getting this season, if you just look at the numbers, he's right up there with Chelsea's best performing attackers. And that was added to tonight. But I can't get away from the fact there are things within his performances that still frustrate me. Like a few weeks ago against Wolves, maybe a lack of, humility or just looking out for a teammate when a goal's got to be there. A sluggishness, tracking back that I think has been prevalent so far this season that's really frustrated me. It was never going to be exposed that much tonight, was it? I mean, let's be honest, it was Preston. They were never going to offer the things that a higher quality Premier League team are going to do going the other way. But at the same time, it's things like that where, and maybe a lack of conviction, a lack of decision making, maybe at times it doesn't feel like maybe Sterling, he goes through a lot of dips within games and then he can pop up because he does have experience and quality that few players have to score a goal like that. But it's just, it's a weird contradiction. He is miles better than some of the attackers we've had in recent years. Again, looking at numbers. But I feel that Sterling should be a flag bearer. He should be the Thiago Silva of this attack. He should be the player leading others. And maybe he is internally, maybe behind the scenes, he is that to players. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those young attackers are, Cole Palmer played with Raheem Sterling at Man City. I'm sure he looks up to him. I'm not saying that Sterling is like a bad influence or anything. It's just on the pitch from the performances I see, I would like to see more all-round performances from him. I think he'll start probably in midweek now, but there are still other players I'm probably more excited to watch, like Noni Madueke, who came off the bench. We did get a 4th goal after what felt like a complete waste of everyone's time with VAR. Enzo puts it in the back of the net after a ricochet inside the box, and he was quite adamant he was onside. But then we have the classic VAR waiting, and it really is insulting. It's insulting when you're watching it from home, but I know firsthand inside the stadium, VAR is absolutely a tragic and even more insulting experience for supporters. And it just should not take that long. And listen, the goal for Enzo is nice. It was nice to see how everyone celebrated with him. This is a guy who has maybe gone through some difficulty in recent weeks with his own fitness. And we saw him coming off in tears against I think it was a Newcastle game, wasn't it? And there was concerns about whether he was going to be out for an extended period of time. He's a player that I hope will have a really good second half of the season and maybe contribute a few more goals. But then it was 4-0. We got it. Chelsea have made it 6 wins in 9. We're through to the fourth round of the FA Cup once again. Last year was an anomaly, really. Chelsea quite regularly get this type of opponent in the third round at Stamford Bridge, and we quite regularly beat them in the third round of the FA Cup, and we've done so again here. So we move on to midweek where we face Middlesbrough. Oh, I do expect some changes, but with Chelsea and injuries, all of that good stuff, we know how sort of unpredictable it can be. I mean, someone's just asked me there in terms of against Borough, what will the lineup be? It's hard to say right now. I don't think it will be dissimilar to this one. I think Silva will come back into the defence. I think Malo Gusto will move over to right back. I think it's more likely that Levi moves over to left back. But then you do have that problem of Benoit Badiashile being out. But I just think that Silva and Dazassi will stay as the back two. I mean, he's been playing that back two very regularly, hasn't he? I think Enzo Casado. I'd like to see Madueke start again. I would have liked to have seen him start today. I thought he brought a lot of good energy late on in the game. Of course, it has opened up at that point. And again, game state, it's basically a dead game at that point. But I would like to see Madueke start. I think he's deserved to start another game. And probably Sterling over Mudryk. Mudryk didn't really do anything tonight. So he'll probably go to Sterling on the left, Palmer in the middle. Up top, I mean, to me, I think if Nkunku's fit, I would be very excited to see Nkunku start. But if he's not really there, then he may go with Broja again. And you know, is it right to then keep Broja on, try and get that momentum building even more as we build up to next weekend's return of the Premier League against Fulham? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know who your man of the match was. If you're watching this live, thank you so much. Please do like the stream, share it around. If you're watching on X, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very, very soon. All the best. And I did have my lucky socks on tonight, and this is 2 times now I've been wearing my lucky socks. I don't think I wore them against Luton last week, and that's why Chelsea nearly messed it up. But we'll go again, and hopefully Chelsea can make it all the way to Wembley in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup this season. All the best.